Okay, I'm just a little nervous right now because I have not looked at this Pokemon's stats since the 5th generation, and this is my OG Porygon 2. Back in the 5th gen, nearly unstoppable with that Eviolite. Also get rid of agility and put an Ice Beam. I don't know what happened to the Ice Beam, but yeah, that's the Porygon 2 I have right now, and it was absolutely ridiculous. But the IVs, not fantastic. I think I might have just like shown these in one of the videos. I was like, oh hey, look, my Porygon 2. Oh, those IVs, because IV breeding back in the 5th generation was nearly impossible. That Destiny Knot only started doing 5 IVs in the 6th generation, and in the 6th generation was when Pokemon started having guaranteed IVs. So pretty much you had to hope for random rolls. If I got a Pokemon with outstanding potential, that was like well above average. If I had a Pokemon with above average potential, sometimes I just kind of stuck to it. So this Porygon 2 seemed good enough for me to use. That he said like defense was the highest IV, and since I was going for the relaxed nature, yeah, I guess this Porygon 2 is passable, and that's why I feel that RNG was certainly cheating back then, that it gave such an unfair advantage, because 5 IV Pokemon were nearly impossible to breed normally, so having just 6 IV shiny Pokemon all day long, pretty cheaty right there. But let's see how my EV training was back then, because EV training was also fairly difficult. Hey, that actually looks pretty good. That actually seems like something I would run. Maybe I would say maybe a bit more special defense, but actually no, like defensive nature, higher defensive investment, decent amount of special defense, and then kind of cutting down on the hit points a bit, because Eviolite gives you a 1.5 boost, therefore your EVs technically get slightly more value in the defenses. Alright, I'm actually proud of that. No, okay, even with the bad IVs, that's why this Porygon 2 still did pretty good. And then you can look at the stats, 127 special defense, 146 defense, give or take 1 or 2 points because it's level 51. And yeah, this is story time, guys. So in my top 10 favorite video, I said I was going to do story time, and Porygon 2 is a big point of story time. So also let's go in like Pokemon Showdown while I can go and like build this Porygon 2 or kind of show a mock-up idea as to what's going on as I talk about these stories. Back in the day, I was looking for those crazy, unpredictable movesets, mostly because it was like 90% of the community played by Smogon rules, and they only did like lame tiers and lame movesets and stuff. So if you were creative, you had an advantage against most of the community because they didn't know what to expect outside their little Smogon bubble, which is where Charge Beam started to arise. That a lot of people, they were doing like Toxic Stall. Of course, you're going to see the Ice Beam on the Porygon 2, and few people were running the Psyshock tech. Now, the reason I started running Psyshock is just as how the Eviolite tech was really good on Porygon 2, more people were using it on the Chansey, because Chansey was pretty much in that same boat. Effectively unstoppable unless you had like a fighting type move or a very powerful physical move just to kind of like run over the Chansey and then naturally recover on the Porygon. So this was pretty much how I just built it up. I was thinking, what about Charge Beam? Now this was back in the day before I even knew that Pokemon Showdown was a thing, so all of my stats and numbers and EV thoughts came off of Cerebi because they actually had the breakdown of hindering, neutral, and beneficial nature and showed the level 50, level 100. Bulbapedia isn't really as clear about this, so I could actually find the specific ranges that I'm looking for on those Pokemon and then kind of do a little bit of extra work that the simulators now do. So just a little bit of fun stuff about why I love Cerebi so much is because that stat breakdown, that's pretty much it, and it made life so much easier. So I was looking, I'm like, yeah, I'm a 105 special attack Pokemon. I'm going to hit pretty hard. What if I Charge Beam? And it's a 70% chance to raise a special attack. So yeah, 125 to 157, that means if I go +1, then I'm going to have more special attack than probably even a Modest Nature or something like that. If I go +2 on the Charge Beam, I'm doing damage, I'm statting up. Even though it's only a 70% chance, it's still going to be better than nothing, and the accuracy was actually the biggest issue of Charge Beam. That, okay, Charge Beam doesn't give me a special attack, that's okay. Like I said, I still did damage. If you're at +2 using Charge Beam, you're still hurting things. Electric is coverage, and then you just try to look for like the super effective hits on the Ice Beam or Psyshock, and then you just optimize for the most damage until all of your opponents die. And then I was just thinking about it, well, if I'm using Recover, my effective health, my long-term gain, is going to be better in the long run if I just have high defensive investment. I'm surviving more hits. So I was like, wait a second, if I survive 2 extra hits because of these defensive investments with that Eviolite, that's an extra +1 potential on the Charge Beam, which means more damage and more opportunities to recover. So that's kind of where the Porygon 2 was born back in the day. A lot of people, they were just going like max hit points, max special attack, maybe a little bit more defensive, and then running Toxic instead, but I decided that Toxic can take too long. that, you know, you have to, and Steel and Poison type Pokemon make it messy, stall, sleep strats. A lot of people ran Chesto Resto back then because the recovery options weren't as insane as we have now, or there weren't like as many Pokemon, and then you could always like rest sleep talk on anything as well. So that was a bit more common. It was just different in the 5th gen. Either way, I was like, wait, I just want to do like 2 shots. I just want to just 2-shot people while they're 3-shotting me. I have the pocket recover, so nothing else matters. And that's where the Porygon 2 came into play. And then I just started using it and just destroying people because it's bulky and nasty and just amazing like that. And Porygon 2 is even being played in like 6th and 7th generation, doubles, meta, it's all over the place. Okay, so now that we have the background for the Porygon 2, we can really get into the story time with my first ever regionals. So, it was super unfortunate. I moved out to Seattle the year after they had the Seattle Regionals, and then they didn't have in Seattle the year I moved, so I was like super bummed out that I still couldn't go to a regional event because I never had the money, and I was always too young, and my parents didn't want to take me, you know, halfway across the state or into another state just to play Pokemon. So, it was kind of unfortunate right there, but I saved up money. I worked 3 jobs, like 60, 70 hours a week, and I did everything I could to save up enough money to go to the Colorado Springs Regionals. Fortunately, I had really good friends in Denver. We all loved Pokemon, we all played Pokemon, and we decided to like, hey, let's just go and have some fun at this regional event. I was the serious competitive one. They just enjoyed Pokemon, so they used a lot of like their in-game teams and stuff. I gave them a little bit of EV training advice. I'm like, hey, you should do this, you need to do this, and then maybe this moveset would be better. So it's kind of like a compromise, because they wanted to play their way, and I was like, if you just add this move, it might come in handy, okay? That'd be pretty cool. But then, the Porygon 2, I was like, if you're going to have one Pokemon, I'm not bringing Porygon 2, I have a different strat, please bring the Porygon 2, is what I told one of my friends. And it turned out that they became like the talk of the regionals. My undefeated Dunsparce Snorlax Drifblim combo wasn't even talked about as much as this Porygon 2. That it always like, I think the reason why is that in pretty much every round, it was the only thing alive against like 1 or 2 Pokemon, and it always went to time. So people were like done with their battles, they're just kind of like looking around seeing what's going on. And eventually like small crowds started to form, like at least in the later rounds. That I think the judges didn't really mind because I don't remember how many rounds she won, but again, she wasn't trying to play competitively like I was, like any kind of victory. Like I think she ended up like with 3 wins or something, like 3 and 4 maybe. But the fact that like my Pokemon caused this to happen was like one of the greatest feelings ever. And then also they got to feel good about themselves for winning battles at an official event because of like all this craziness. Also their Archeops was doing pretty good because Archeops just Rock Slide hit both Pokemon with a lot of speed. Maybe they flinch, and then Porygon 2 goes and crushes their souls as well. Like, I think once they were at the point where they were out of contention for, like, any kind of top cut or anything, and it was just 2 people having fun playing Pokemon, the spectators just kind of crowded around, and everyone was talking about the Porygon 2. And if you were actually at, like, I think the 2013 Colorado Springs Regionals, and if you were there and you actually remember this Porygon 2, because I was, like, talking to people, it's like, yo, did you hear about the Porygon 2 over at that table over there? I'm like, I know that person. That's my Porygon 2. And then, like, just watching the battles, it was pretty crazy because even if Porygon 2 would lose, it'd be, like, losing in time against the 2v1 because Porygon 2 is just hanging in there doing, like, all the crazy stuff. And then, another one of my friends, I don't think he entered, but he was just kind of, like, chilling in the corner, enjoying himself as well. So, like, it was a really awesome friend experience. It was the only regional event I've actually done travel for because otherwise it has to be like super local. Like I've only gone to the Seattle regionals because I lived on Capitol Hill and it was like a 20-minute walk away or something like that. But other than that, yeah, like I flew out and then after the regionals, like, okay, cool. Now we get to hang out for a week and do fun things. So it was a really awesome like vacation. It was definitely a vacation I needed because again, I was working so many jobs and I was doing so much craziness, and it ended up turning into a reason why I moved out to Denver because I like Denver. Now here's the thing, I like Washington State more than Denver. I like the Seattle, you know, Everett area more than Denver, and I feel like I would like Denver more if I never went to Washington. Like Washington spoiled me of Denver's beauty because Washington State is just that amazing. But overall, yeah, it was pretty awesome, and like that's just kind of the Porygon 2. I brought it. We also went to like these weekly Pokemon meetups at like a Denny's and stuff. And at that, I always brought the Porygon 2. It was like, yo, try and stop me. And eventually people started running like a Trick Scarf Rotom. Taunt didn't really hurt the Porygon 2 too much. It would slow down and it could be like a way of exploiting the Porygon 2. But if you taunt me, I'm still at full health. I'm just going to get like free Charge Beam or Ice Beam or Slash Shock damage. Then I'm going to switch out into like my Snorlax or another tank Pokemon. So yeah, but I just thought it was really cool that I went to the regionals. my friends decided to like help me go to the regionals, but they ended up enjoying themselves. That it wasn't like a completely selfish thing like, hey, I just flew across the country to go to this event and you drove me here, thanks, I'll see you in like 5 hours or something. No, like everyone became a part of it, and then they actually get to have the spotlight on them for a bit because of the crazy Pokemon concoctions I came up with back in the day. So again, like showing how all of these things I did back in the 4th and 5th generation eventually leading into the creation, well actually not like creation of my YouTube, I started off as a Minecraft YouTuber, but transitioning to Pokemon content, because these were the same things. Like I could have made videos about this just as much back then as I did for the 6th generation. I don't know if it would have changed much about my channel, because I think like we hit such an acceleration to X and Y. Like I probably would have been a small channel, maybe slightly larger through the 5th generation, then X and Y would have kind of blown up about the same. But yeah, it's just kind of like all these crazy ideas I decided to turn into videos, and then I made a video about that OP Dunsparce at regionals that went undefeated because no one knew how to stop the psych up with minimize evasion shenanigans. So that was pretty awesome right there. And I just thought like I had all these stories to tell, and then it turned into the YouTube, and I had this really awesome Porygon set. I think over time I ended up like trying the Toxic from time to time. You know, I did like Ice Beam, Side Shock, Recover, Toxic. That really didn't go over too well, so I think I brought it back like this, and now my Porygon to this day has agility. I wanted to do some damage calculations, but I don't really know where we can go with those. Like, back in the day, Ice Beam, like, the thing is everyone was running, like, Garchomp and Metagross, so Metagross did tank out the Porygon pretty well. That's why you just run something to take out Metagross, like a Fire-type Pokemon next to that. There was also a lot of, like, the Drizzle Swift Swim, but it doesn't matter if Porygon 2 is just tanking all of your damage. So yeah, Garchomp with the Ice Beam in singles back in the day. So yeah, it was just normal nature like that. So you couldn't directly one-shot, but once you got the Charge Beam, you know, as long as you're not Charge Beaming into Garchomp, you have Charge Beam, you're at +1, +2. They try to bring in a Garchomp to deal with you, and the damage just really isn't there. Actually, let's go put in Relaxed Nature. It was like, what, 160 EVs, and then something like that. So even then, like Earthquake doing no damage, if it wasn't Choice Band or if it wasn't Life Orb, it wasn't going to be doing enough. And then like Earthquake's like, cool, I can two-shot Molly Ice Beam and then heal up on Recover, Ice Beam, Recover, Ice Beam, Recover, and then try to Charge Beam the new Pokemon coming in. So that was a lot of the fun back then. It's just that there were less, and also like not everyone cheated back then as well. That, you know, when you're going up against an RNG player, you knew when a Pokemon had the, you know, 4 or 5, 6 IVs, but it just didn't feel right. So back then, you know, people didn't have complete IVs anyway, and that was the norm. Like the above average battlers still couldn't get a hold of perfect IV Pokemon. So yeah, if the Garchomp only had like 25 IVs in attack, or wasn't fully EV trained in 252 because of like, you know, a little bit of hit point splashing or something, the Porygon 2 just did better. Like the game wasn't as refined, so such a refined Porygon set kind of tilted it. Oh wait, that wasn't even on screen the entire time. A+ screen capture right there, guys. But yeah, just kind of showing like against some of the strongest Pokemon, you know, 130 attack, there wasn't Megas, there wasn't Z moves. It was pretty much Garchomp being some of the most ferocious damage out there. 130 attack, 140 attack was kind of a rarity, and then everything else just didn't have enough. Even special attackers, because I had that, you know, a little bit of splash of special defense in there. Oh wait, wow, never mind. This doesn't even have the Eviolite, guys. That's actually, I was about to say, that looked like a little bit too much damage. But yeah, the Eviolite even showing less damage against everything. That's why this Porygon was just so awesome. So I sacrificed the damage just to make myself tankier, and then at +1 Charge Beam, it stopped mattering, and then super effective hits or super effective hits. Really, the main way of stopping this thing was Toxic, and there was a lot of situations where my Porygon 2 did get Toxic, but I didn't care. It's like, okay, I'm still very tanky. I've got at least 4 more turns of being alive, so that's 2 Charge Beams and then 2 KOs on the opponent. And again, if they're doing Toxic, that's a free Charge Beam turn, so I'm at +3, one-shotting everything until Toxic takes me down, and if they don't have enough damage for like Toxic damage plus whatever else to KO me, then I just recover, and I buy myself an extra turn. So the Porygon 2 was ridiculous back in the day, and I used it because Porygon was one of my favorite Pokemon. I'm like, yo, Eviolite, I'm not going to be chancy. I started picking up the Dusclops a little later, but the Porygon 2 was a blast. I really want to run it in singles again. I just don't have the properly trained Porygon yet. I had one somewhere scattered about many of these boxes. Like, the Porygon has the right AVs, and it is a 6th generation bred, or yeah, it's 6th generation bred. I didn't do it for 7th gen. So it's somewhere, maybe it's in my Pokebank. and I wanted to, or maybe it's a Porygon 2. Yeah, I'll have to find it somewhere else, but the idea is I can just EV train it really quick, maybe Hyper train it if it doesn't have the IVs. I think it just had, like, hit points, defense, special defense, and I don't remember if I wanted speed or not, so it was just the stats that mattered, and maybe, like, a pretty good in special attack, so having max IV in special attack would be really nice on that Porygon. So I might have to bring the Porygon back now, because of all this talk and all this fun stuff. But there we go, guys. Hope you all enjoyed the story time, a little bit of regional stories, and then just Porygon 2 being a boss back in the day. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.